Where is it now? I see it. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. And I look forward to Hari Lamba's presentation about his book, Brighter Climate Futures, and his plan for rejuvenating the natural world as well as our world economy. So thank you very much. And we are recording this presentation. It's going to be made available later. And I'm here to congratulate Hari Lamba on his new book, Brighter Climate Futures. Thank you for coming out to his launch. As I just mentioned, this is a very positive, optimistic, and hopeful, but urgently important book and plan, all about steps that we need to take as a global community at all different levels of society to not only repair and halt climate change and repair the damage, but begin to rejuvenate the natural world and our human societies and economies. So this is a very important and very timely book published by Regent Press, Mark Wyman, out of Berkeley, California. And I think Dr. Lamba and Regent Press and everybody here who is part of this, and our guests from the California Writers Club and from elsewhere. So everybody, thank you very much. And then Mark Wyman will introduce Hari Lamba in more detail.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings all. Glad you could join us for the Regent Press Zoom release event for Brighter Climate Futures. I'm Mark Wyman, the publisher at Regent Press, and I take great pride in presenting Dr. Hari Lamba's new book, Brighter Climate Futures, a global energy climate ecosystem transformation, which presents a complete quantitative time-bound global plan that will provide plenty of clean renewable energy, rid us of the carbon emissions of fossil fuels, minimize global average temperature rise, and rejuvenate forests, coastal ecosystems, and agriculture for a clean and beautiful Earth. Dr. Lamba has experience in engineering, business, and ecology. He holds a PhD in engineering from the University of Illinois and has 40 years experience in industry, both in engineering, product development, and in advanced technology. He was one of the founders of the Earth Summit Network, an informal organization started in Chicago in 1991 to educate the local public about the Earth Summit that was held at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the following year in 1992, where the original global warming treaty was signed. Since then, he has been active in nonprofit groups talking about and making presentations on climate change, a practice which he is about to continue. Hari will speak for about 30 minutes, illustrating his talk with a series of slides. During the presentation, if any questions occur to anyone, please use the chat function on Zoom to send us questions, which will then be edited and asked of Hari at the end of the presentation. Also, in the final 10 minutes of the program, anyone who would like to unmute themselves and make a verbal comment is welcomed, as long as everyone doesn't talk all at once. Please note that Dr. Lamba's book, Brighter Climate Futures, is available online from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and also your favorite online bookstore. A link will also be provided to the Regent Press listing. And I now turn the stage over to Hari. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has been an incredible publisher. This, by the way, is the book that he has put together. He's done a marvelous job putting the whole book together including help with preparing some of the graphics for the book. So I was very lucky to get a hold of Mark, and we've been a great team together. Climate change represents the biggest long-term threat to our world and possibly even our civilization. But instead of books that convey a picture of gloom and doom, my book provides a total practical and time-bound plan of a time that will help us achieve the needed solutions in a timely manner. In my book, all the needed ingredients are brought together in terms of global energy growth and transition strategies, carbon emission reductions, massive electrification, enhanced energy efficiency, methods for global organization cooperation, economic and environmental justice, and the massive restoration of forests and coastal ecosystem to absorb carbon. I'll be talking about some of the details, I said, but now, the time for hand-wringing, I think, is over. What we need is to adequately plan and do effective global implementation. That's what we really need to do. We humans are just look around yourself, all the technology and everything. We are a very intelligent species. The Homo sapiens means a wise species. Now it's the time for us to start really showing our wisdom. Now I'd like to transition to the slide presentation I was going to make. So Christina, will you allow me to share my screen?
Yes, screen sharing should work.
Okay. The host, it says, has disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, I will put that. Now I've made it so that multiple people can share. Any people should be able to share.
Okay.
Let me see.
Here goes.
That's to share mine. Yeah, you
All right.
should.
Can everybody see my presentation?
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yep, I can see it, Harry.
All right. Here goes. All right. Basically, this is the book that we put together. And as you can see from my bright smile, it's one of my better pictures. And it certainly is supposed to be a really positive message about how things can be much better. And our climate futures can be much brighter. And that's the whole gist of this communication. So this is a summary of the global transformation I'm talking about. This particular picture shows a wind farm in Costa Rica, which we had visited in early part of 2018. Costa Rica is one of the few countries that is 100% renewable energy. Most of it, 80 to 85% is hydroelectric, and the other 15% is wind. My global transformation has 5 components to it, the main part of which is almost 70 to 80% of the book talks about the global energy and emissions transformation. So where I come from is I say, in climate, they keep talking about cutting back and so forth. I say, let's start with energy and let's try and see a strategy where we can have plenty of energy. And so that's where I come from. And then the second part of it is expansion of carbon sink ecosystems so that they will absorb some carbon. We will still have to have a temperature rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we still are going to need an organized process of disaster risk reduction. This whole process if it has to be accepted by people, needs jobs, economy, and industrial transformation. And so that part of it is very important. And then we need a strengthened global organization in order to implement all the different parts of this plan. And so we really do need, to have an effective strengthening of the United Nations type organizations. I'm going to run through this a little bit because, truly speaking, I really can't, even in this short time I have, I really cannot communicate everything I have in my book. My book actually has quite a bit. The first introduction is really the fact that the whole world needs to up its ambition so that, like Japan has said and other nations have said, and even some of the new political actors in the US have said that we want to be carbon neutral by 2050. The ultimate aim of this whole objective is to convince the world that, yes, the world will say we are going to be carbon neutral by 2050. The first part is, what is the status and setting the goals. The main chapter is chapter 2, which presents the entire global energy and climate plan. But chapter 2 actually also includes things that people don't talk about before. It includes aviation, tourism, shipping, and military. You know, we think nothing of going to a particular vacation someplace, so we fly to the so faraway place, and hardly anybody has been monitoring about the carbon emissions of aviation. And also, once you get there, you use a fossil fuel car to drive around. Well, we need to talk about that too. And then at this point of history, the military, global military, needs to be involved too in solutions to climate change. And it would actually be to its advantage to do so. We need massive carbon sinks, as we talked about, to absorb the carbon. And I'll talk about the role of that. We still need advanced disaster management for the climate disasters, which are getting worse, which even if we restrict temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we are still going to need that. And we can do a lot better job at that. You know, we've had wildfires in California, which we've been suffering from. And the Gulf region in the United States is suffering from these hurricanes, which are worsening. So we need advanced disaster risk reduction. We had our first rain yesterday in California and San Francisco. So that is something to cheer about. We need to adapt to climate change and have a regenerative agriculture. Chapter 6 actually presents a very detailed energy and climate plan for the United States and for California. California, like European Union, is leading quite a bit in terms of climate change. And I'm very fortunate that locally I can actually go and touch and feel and actually photograph some of these nice options, which are like demonstration sites. So I have some of those actually photos and descriptions of those in my book, and I have a couple of those in my talk. Then I present, people say, you know, hey, United States, we can be doing it, but how about China? If China doesn't do anything, what do we do? Well, I have very detailed quantitative plans for how China can get out of 60% coal usage that it is doing now and get down to almost zero fossil fuel use by the year 2050, and how this is going to be much better for China. And then for India, which is wanting to use coal over the next 30 years, if China and India continue to use coal together with the United States and the rest of the world, we are essentially dead in the water. Everything we do with climate change is going to be unsuccessful if they persist in the use of coal in a significant way. And then the European Union. At that time, the data included Britain, and so it is the European Union of 28 nations. Globally, what sort of organization we need, that's chapter 8. Investments, how are we going to pay for them, is chapter 9. We keep hearing contrary views from climate deniers and the fossil fuel interests. So 10 is major arguments for denying their arguments. Then we still need to deal with methane and nitrous oxide emissions. So there's a strategy for that. We need to be better off economically. The common man in the world needs to come up about well. So there's chapter 12 is that. And then in chapter 13, I try and provide a vision of how things can be a lot better. And so it's, like I said, a very positive way, and we will be much better off if we start to do something like what I am put forth in my plan. November 9th, I heard in the Race to Zero set of talks that are actually still going on, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and I did send him a copy of my book, and he did send me a nice thankful note back. As for the IPCC, to avoid the worst of climate change, he said our goal is to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial level. And that's basically what the IPCC has been saying in its 1.5C report published in 2018. So I took that as a goal that we would try and achieve. And he has been trying to convince the rest of the world to try and say, hey, guys, nations, please up your ambition. And so I'm hoping that this process and this book will help him convince the other nations to do that. Here are the solar panels on my house. I now have installed them in June of 2018, and I got a 30% tax credit from the US federal government, and my electric bill went to zero. So I have a Lamba plan that is in parallel with the plan I'm promoting for the world. Anyways, so the global transformation strategy and plan, if we implement it, things will be much better. We'll have plenty of clean energy. We'll have greenhouse gas emissions like carbon dioxide down to zero, and then we'll have expanded ecosystem. Here's a picture of a 2050 megawatt solar power plant. It's the biggest solar power plant in the world as of January of 2020. And this power plant in India is typical of the large power plants now. They are there all over the world. Globally, there are 62 solar thermal power plants larger than 200 megawatts. Now, just to give you a little feel, when they set up a nuclear reactor anyway, usually a reactor is 200 megawatts. And usually they'll have a set from anywhere from 3 to 5 of these reactors, which make up a nuclear power station, so that it would be 5 of those reactors would be 1,000 megawatts. Well, this one is 2,050 megawatts. And the cost of this was about $1 a watt. I paid about $2 a watt for my solar system, but this utility scale system only cost $1 a watt, which is about the lowest cost power plant that can compare to all other energy sources. Nuclear power plants are $6,000 a kilowatt. This is $1,000 a kilowatt. And even coal is $2,500 a kilowatt. So this is the lowest cost. So I took a look at these, and I saw how much square kilometers these things take up, and I then went to the World Energy Outlook of the International Energy Agency, and they told me, hey, in 2017, the world used so much energy. So I took that whole energy calculation, and I calculated how much, in terms of solar panels, the world would need, how much area it would need for the whole world in order to produce all of the energy. And here's a map that shows that we have solar energy in plenty. We receive enormous amounts of solar energy. Actually, if you look at it, our whole life is dependent on solar energy. All the food we eat, if the sun was not there, we would be dead tomorrow. Well, on the positive side, that's actually the positive side to some extent also, but the sun can provide us all the energy we need. It gives us more than 100 times of what we currently consume. If you look at each of those squares that I've drawn on the map of the world, each of those squares, any one of those squares is capable of producing all of the world's energy for 2017. So that's just 1% of the land area, which is much less, of course, than the total area of the earth, which includes the seas. So if we just take the land area, which is 140 million square miles, less than 1 million square miles of that is plenty for us to generate all the energy. The question is, what do we do on the rest part of the time when the sun is not shining at a particular location? What do we do for the rest of the time? And that's that's the challenge that my book has shown how we can overcome that challenge. So to give you a snapshot of this quantitative thing, I took like I said in the last slide, I showed you the total energy use was for 2017, actually was 162 petawatt hours. I converted there are different energy units they use around the world, million tons of oil equivalent, and Europe uses exajoules. And I think, so I converted it into electrical energy, 162 petawatt hours. And as of 2017, this is where our energy came from. 27% from coal, 32% from oil, 22% from natural gas, 5% from nuclear, 9% from all renewables, including hydro, and then 5% from solid biomass, which includes wood chips that are used to power plants. And so we are 81% dependent on fossil fuels as of now. This picture is still pretty true as of today. And, you know, so we are a fossil fuel civilization. Even our groceries wouldn't get to the grocery store because if the diesel truck couldn't get the groceries to the grocery store, we'd be dead in the water. So we need a systematic transformation from the year 2021 to the year 2050. It has to be organized, systematic, and step by step all the way. And that's what my book, the energy and climate part of my book proposal. The world energy use in 2050, according to the World Energy Outlook, they actually, if I look at what they talk about 2017, the World Energy Outlook at 2018, according to the International Energy Agency, they said the world needs, if we keep doing things the way we are right now, world energy use would be 255 petawatt hours, but we'd still be using 73% fossil fuel energy. So if current policies continue, we are really dead in the water by the year 2050. So I said, well, let me take 252 kilowatt hours. Okay, so you want to expand your energy use? All right, you want to expand it? Good. I can show you how we can do expanded energy use. You can have plenty of energy, but you can do it a different way. So coal essentially here is 0. Combined oil and natural gas are about 6%. And we have, I said, okay, it said, here's, wind is something which depends on the wind potential. You have to have adequate wind velocity. But it said, okay, this is how much the world can produce. So I said, okay, I'll take you at your word, at your analysis. And I took that number and it was 15% of the total energy use we could produce from wind. And then based on the solar energy calculations I ran, we could do 31% from solar energy. This would be using other forms of solar, but also solar photovoltaic. These are the solar panels of the type I showed you on my roof and the big power plant, and that's called photovoltaic. So electricity, sun shines on it and it produces electricity in voltages and amperage. Next, the European Union and California have shown that if you systematically work at improving energy efficiencies in all sectors of the economy, in buildings, homes, industry, in electricity generation, so forth, you could do the same thing with 25% less energy, which means, well, okay, so you take a building, and if you can do the same tasks for the building with 25% less energy, why not? And so you can actually do that in 25%. So I said, okay, 25% energy efficiency. And then I put 9% for something called renew storage. And I'll explain what I mean by renew storage. It is solar energy or wind or renewable energy that you store in a fuel that can then be used elsewhere. And those will be fuels like hydrogen. Okay, so here's a coal-fired power plant as it works today. You go to a mine, you dig up the mine, whether it's underground or you remove a mountain top and then you do strip mining and you put it on a rail car and it comes to your power plant and produces there, it's spreading dust all along the way. Sometimes it can be mitigated, but then it comes up and it ends up as a pile in your next to the power plant. It goes to a furnace. It's warmed up, it's burnt, and then creates steam. And the steam turbine runs a generator, and the generator makes electricity that then goes to the transmission lines. And of course, the rest of the heat that doesn't get used, and the smoke goes up the stack. A Dutch study, talk about the Netherlands, Pauline, the Dutch study looked at all the power plants in the world. Well, guess what? 35% of all the heat energy in coal, only 35% is converted into electricity. 65% on the average goes up the stack. So there's two aspects to it. One is, of course, that fossil fuels are quite wasteful. The other factor is, only 20% of the gasoline in your car, the heat energy in that gasoline or petrol, goes to convert to energy at where the rubber tire meets the road. 80% of the energy that goes into your gasoline tank goes through out the exhaust pipe or as heat energy to heat up the engine. So when we want to replace it, we only have to replace, if we talk about electrical power plant, I only need to replace 35% of the energy that is in the coal, which actually reduces the amount of area I need in the world to produce the same amount of electrical energy with solar power plants. Here's what you would replace it with. You would replace a fossil fuel power plant with a solar plus battery plus hydrogen power plant. And this is how it would work. You would have an oversized solar PV power plant that first we produce, go towards the right. It'd be charging a battery system during the day. So be a pretty good sized battery system. And then after that, you would at night have the natural gas power plant. It'd be turned off at night. And the solar plus battery system would be producing electricity to the grid. At night, you would turn on the natural gas power plant, and so you'd have plenty of energy even at night and for early morning. Well, hydrogen is coming online, and many countries, including the Scandinavian countries and Australia and Japan and China and some in the United States, are doing research. And you can take water, which is hydrogen oxide, and with electrolysis, you can convert it, split it up into hydrogen and oxygen. I'll talk about a little bit more on that on the next slide. So you do hydrogen production during the day, and then during the, you store it on site, and then you can basically go and at night, instead of turning on the once this technology comes on stream, you would take the, turn off the natural gas power plant, and you'd be running a hydrogen power plant that could be either like fuel cells or it could be a gas turbine. As today's natural gas power plants run on gas turbines, And so these types of gas turbines are being developed, and you could be running your gas turbine on hydrogen. In California, the independent system operator that actually runs the electrical system talked about a duck curve, which means that as soon as solar energy, there's a lot of solar energy now in California. As soon as the solar energy comes on stream, what happens, unfortunately, is that what used to be happening was that the non-renewable energy generators, natural gas power plant would have to ramp down. And then when solar energy subsided at the end of the day, it would have to be ramped up. And the curve looked a little bit like a duck. So they called it the duck curve. And this became famous worldwide. And I've suggested an solution to that. It's called the hump curve. Instead of the duck, it becomes like a camel curve or the hump curve. And so what you're doing during the day is you have an oversized solar system that basically is producing electrical energy during the day. And it's also charging a battery system and also producing hydrogen at the same time, at the same location. There are some options for that. So come when the sun goes down, so during the day you're enjoying solar energy directly. It's feeding into the grid. And just after that, you use battery power. During the day, if clouds come over, the battery system kicks in and you, the consumer, don't know the difference. And after that, there is, during the night, you have the stored hydrogen fuel, and you generate electricity at night to early morning using the hydrogen generator. And You can be producing it and storing it on site and immediately using it. This actually points to the fact that you can, instead of doing things at your power plant, which is feeding into directly electricity into your electrical grid, you can have standalone solar PV power plants. They're just standing alone, and all they do is they take solar PV and basically use an electrolyzer to you have water coming in, which is hydrogen oxide. So you split it up into hydrogen and oxygen, and you store the hydrogen as a gas or a liquid on site. At the same time, there's oxygen and nitrogen. Nitrogen is about 78% of our air that you're breathing right now, and the oxygen is close to 20%. And so with an air separator, you separate the nitrogen out using solar energy, and you get the nitrogen. You take nitrogen and hydrogen, and at a reactor, using solar energy again, you convert it into ammonia. And so you have ammonia, and you can store ammonia as a gas or a liquid, and ammonia is actually a nicer way of storing hydrogen. You can transport ammonia, and you can crack it and get hydrogen back, or you can use ammonia directly as a fuel. And there are other things that even Japan is working on called methyl cyclohexane, which serves as a hydrogen carrier. It's just a chemical that picks up hydrogen using solar energy. You take it somewhere else, release the hydrogen, and then you reuse methyl cyclohexane. And Japan has talked about methyl cyclohexane research that they are doing. And anyway, right now, if you take nitrogen and hydrogen, the world is spending 800 million metric tons. You see, they produce it either from natural gas or from coal, and the world is emitting 800 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, which is more than the emissions of Germany, and to make nitrogen and hydrogen. So the first thing could be this kind of a power plant could be producing green, what would be called green hydrogen and green nitrogen. And so we would be getting away from these tremendous emissions coming from the current process, which is steam methane reforming and the Haber-Bosch process. We would get away from that, and we would be producing, green nitrogen and hydrogen. But I'm saying we need to use this for, the rest of the economy. Again, like I said, being in California, I am very fortunate. I was able to just drive over about 10 miles away in the city of San Rafael, California, and Marine Clean Energy, which is what called a community
community choice aggregator.
Yeah, CCA which is a good innovative way of producing electricity, an organization that produces renewable electricity and feeds it into the grid. And so I visited this solar electric charging station. You see the station, it's during the day, you're directly charging the cars with electricity during the day, and during the night, you basically charging the vehicles. You charge the vehicles from the grid, and so I took this concept, which is I saw in San Rafael, and I said, okay. So I've come up with this new concept of solar electric hydrogen highways. The station would be this shown in the graphic is in the book, and what it shows is this is a mini version of a solar battery hydrogen power plant that I talked about earlier. And here you would have like a rest area on the side of the highway. I'm sure you've traveled on the highways, US highways. If you haven't, you can see these kinds of rest areas. So you pull into this rest area, and you would have a solar PV power plant that could directly charge your car. You could have a battery system that would also charge your car, or you can be producing hydrogen with an electrolyzer on site and either producing electricity at night at the service station, or you could have hydrogen supplied from one of those, that previous solar PV power plant that I talked to you that was used for making green hydrogen. And so we would have this kind of a power station, solar electric hydrogen station. To give you an example, we could have the 110,000 gas stations in the United States replaced by 110,000 10 megawatt solar electric hydrogen stations spread throughout the US. And so over a 30-year period, you could be completely converting to this kind of a system. You pull into this service station and you could get your car electrically charged, or you would get hydrogen for your fuel cell vehicle. It would, so you'd have zero emission vehicles. Inside cities, you would have to be a little more innovative, maybe hydrogen supplied from elsewhere. And that's what the next slide is about. This is 100% green hydrogen refueling station that is alongside a regular gas station, which supplies green hydrogen. So you could pull up your fuel cell vehicle and get yourself a tank full in your gaseous tank, which is a gas. In your gaseous tank, you could get a pressurized form of hydrogen. Right now, the cost of hydrogen is high, but as Chris Peoples had pointed out to me, that we are on a trend to the point where within a few years, the cost of hydrogen, 1 kilogram of hydrogen would be about 3 gallons, and 1 kilogram is the equivalent of 1 gallon of gasoline, a US gallon of gasoline, the imperial gallon. And it basically, in a few years, we would have hydrogen that would be cost effective for running not only cars, but trucks and buses also, and possibly other forms of transportation. So the highlights of the energy transformation from the 30 years I'm talking about is we will replace all fossil fuel power plants. I just like to remind you that in case you're not speaking up, maybe if you want, you can unmute. You can mute your.
Yes, I will go and mute the person. I thought everybody was muted.
You can, if you can mute it, then we won't have the noise, background noise. So we need to replace the 101.2 billion fossil fuel vehicles with zero emission vehicles. We need a systematic plan over the next 30 years for the 1.2 billion vehicles. And that I describe in my book, how we would systematically could do that. But, you know, renewable energy can be in addition to all the fossil fuel use we use. If we do that, then we are still dead in the water. We need to replace fossil fuel power plants and fossil fuel use in our economy and replace it with, renewable energy in direct or stored forms. For the rest, everything that we do, for example, natural gas we use in the rest of the economy, we need to electrify it. And we need to then, as we electrify everything in industry, home, buildings, and transportation, we need to supply that additional electrical energy with renewable energy power plants of the SPH type. And in addition, maybe also for what we can't electrify, we use hydrogen or ammonia. And so that would be what we would do. We would store renewable energy or solar energy in storage fuels like hydrogen. And believe it or not, at the current moment, many nations are actually getting geared to do just exactly that. Australia is exporting coal. Australia, in cooperation with Japan, is getting ready to try and be a global supplier of hydrogen made from solar energy. And so solar energy, the good thing about this is solar energy is available everywhere. And so you can actually be doing hydrogen production in most parts of the world where there is significant amounts of solar energy. for those that do not have, like Europe. Europe, solar hydrogen could be produced in the Mediterranean region and then supplied to the northern region like the Netherlands or Britain. And so they could supply hydrogen and ammonia to the northern parts of Europe. You know, the same thing could happen in the US. We could produce hydrogen in the parts of the US that get a lot of solar energy and supply it to the north, or maybe even make a business of supplying it to Canada. You know, so this could be, this is going to be really big business, and we should be applying pressure to get ready for it. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that folks talk about a lot in terms of solutions to climate change. And this is the part which is, we need a massive expansion of carbon sinks. We have been destroying our forests, our coastal ecosystems, and degrading our land systems. Many arid parts of the world are actually turning into desert. It's called desertification. I've been listening to or reading books on desertification by the United Nations since the 1970s. And so this is a global problem. We not only have to restore those ecosystems, but we have to expand them. So we need green carbon, which you're familiar with. We need to do a global afforestation of the earth. I'm talking about adding 1 billion hectares globally. For the US has lost 120 million hectares since the year 1620. I'm talking about adding 80 million hectares back in the boreal forests in Alaska, in temperate forests, in the temperate region, and then the tropical forests in the Florida region. Then we need blue carbon. This has become pretty common in use in some areas. And there's a gentleman by the name of David Helwag who has a Blue Front group. And so he's trying to push, and what I'm advocating here is blue carbon coastal ecosystems over the entire global non-ice coastline. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then, you know, our soil, which through green revolution agriculture has been degrading, its fertility has been going down with all this agribusiness type agriculture that we have. And we need alternative forms of agriculture. We need to deal with our soil in such a way so that we keep adding carbon to it in terms of compost, making it more organic, and so forth, making it more fertile. And that will help our agriculture. And we need to cut down on animal agriculture, because animal agriculture and our meat-eating habits are destroying and producing a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions. And actually a plant-based diet is actually better for our health. And so, you know, we need, but here's what I'm saying. It takes a lot to manage these types of ecosystems. They have to be, firstly, we have to stop the destruction, and then we have to start managing and building and expanding these in a very systematic manner. But it takes time. So what I'm saying is, let's get fossil fuel use down to 6%. And this remaining 6%, we try and start absorbing carbon here up to the year 2050. And then we are going to need to make the earth a little bit cooler from 2050 to the year 2100. And that's the time when the real good management of these ecosystems would kick in and would start absorbing carbon. And maybe by then, some of the carbon capture technologies, which really at the present moment, there's nothing in the world in terms of good demonstration sites for carbon capture and storage. You know, so hopefully between 2050 and the year 2100, we can use those to bring carbon down. But these, the green, the blue, and the brown carbon, are really going to help us beautify the earth and, you know, absorb carbon. Now, wildfires are something that desperately need disaster risk reduction before, during, and after. The forests need to be carbon sinks, but yet they have become carbon emitters. the forest fires are emitting carbon like crazy now all over the world. It was, if it isn't the United States, the Amazon is on fire. Australia, fires last year were catastrophic. Parts of Europe are on fire. And Siberia is, forests are on fire. So really, if we have to forest the earth, I have a concept in my book that basically makes the point that if we have to have global afforestation, we are going to need to do layout design so that we can minimize forest fires, so that forest fires from one area do not expand to the other area. And we have to manage our forests as we establish them. We have to manage them both in order to minimize wildfires and to give wildlife crossings, so that it serves both, for wildfire minimization. And then once the wildfires have denuded the hillside, we need strategies to minimize landslides. And we also need to think about other land ecosystems. People say, hey, why are you focusing on forests? How about savannas or grasslands or chaparrals? Well, yes, we need to look at those other types of ecosystems too. And so we need to pay attention to biodiversity also. Here's a coastal ecosystem, and this is a graphic that's in my book. Basically, it shows you that you can have different kinds of coastal ecosystems. These are usually a little bit out of sight. The only folks who really see these are fishermen. But believe it or not, this is a very important part of what can help us. So you can have in the tidal zones, on the left, you can see the mangrove swamps, which have water when the tide comes in and no water when the tide goes out. You can have salt marshes that are in slightly deeper water. And then you can have seagrasses that are even deeper than that. In the Bay Area, there is eelgrass, which looks a little bit like a flat-bladed eelgrass. It's these seagrasses, believe it or not, you look at the brown portion that I've shown, under the seagrasses, on an average, there's 4 meters or 13 feet of soil that is very rich in carbon. So they can absorb enormous amounts of carbon, in fact, more per area than tropical forest. And so all these kinds of ecosystems, 50 of those in the last reconstruction and plant in the Obama administration, they had 50 of these types of projects that were rejuvenated along the coast of the United States. And one of those actually is salt marshes in the south side of the bay. Anyways, these coastal ecosystems, which are blue carbon, can help us a lot. Plus, they'll help fisheries, and the global fisheries are in the process of collapsing. And the catastrophic collapse that is occurring, this will help not only absorb carbon, make our coastal areas much beautiful, be able to absorb the coastal storms, provide a buffer against coastal storms, and give us biodiversity. And we can actually go around, and wherever there's water depth of a certain type, we can take seedlings from eelgrass and go and actually, combination of civil engineers and ecologists and ocean farmers can actually go and plant some of these seagrasses. We are in the process of the 6th most massive extinction of the species in planetary history. All of the rest were natural. Ours is human-induced. It's been caused by habitat destruction, urbanization, expanding of our cities, this urban sprawl, farming, cattle ranches, and now climate change. Here you see something that, these are exotic species. These are the Tapanuli orangutans in the rainforest in Sumatra. I took these photographs from a book that I read one page of every day. It's called Our Planet by Fothergill and Scully, with a foreword by David Attenborough. And it's, these species, within the hour that we are talking of this talk, we might lose a species. We have 30 million species, out of which only 8 million have been cataloged, but we are losing species at a fast and furious rate. We need to stop that process. globally. Here's again another push for that. We have about 1 million miles or 1.6 million kilometers long coastal coastlines on the whole world, non-ice coastline. We need to do a restoration and expansion of these coastal ecosystems along that entire coastline. And as you can see, you'll get beauty, you'll get carbon absorption, you'll get places where fisheries can come and have habitats and spawn the young. And, and different forms of crustaceans. There's other things called oyster reefs that were also part of the resuscitation in the previous reconstruction. Then, we need a globally organized disaster risk reduction. The United Nations has a United Nations Office of the DRR, but we are still going to have 1.5 degrees Celsius rise, even if we are successful in doing what I'm talking about by the year 2050. We'll need to minimize the damage. Wildfires, hurricanes and typhoons, coastal storms, tornadoes, catastrophic floods, landslides, heat waves, droughts. Of course, there'll be tsunamis too, as I'm sure Japan experiences and the Indian Ocean experienced. But that's an earthquake-related one. But what helps us with a preparation for these disasters will also help us for tsunamis. But we need to prepare, we need to survive them better, and then we need to build better back. Our current president-elect has taken up that he must have listened to climate change advisors and adopted the word build better black. And that's where it kind of comes from. It comes from disaster management. You build your houses and structures and your communities better so that you can better survive the next storm that comes along. We need an economic transformation that is going to be, we need a global industrial transformation. After COVID-19, we need a COVID-19 recovery, but bigger than that, we need a climate transformation that can be really big. It can transform every sector of our global economy, from energy use to transportation to homes to buildings to industry. The whole thing can be retooled. I have outlined a 4-point pro-employment and pro-environment strategy, from uplifting depressed communities to reindustrialization to sustainable forests to sustainable fisheries to sustainable industry and so forth, which can employ enormous amounts of people. We can convert some of our cities into eco-cities, and we need a just transition to help fossil fuel workers transition to the new renewable energy economy. We need to help possibly fossil fuel oil producing nations to do the same. We need energy democracy, which instead of, solar energy, the great thing about it is it's distributed. So you can actually set up a small power plant just outside your city. So it minimizes the amount of transmission lines you have to spend money on, because it can be just outside your city and can feed directly into your city. Or it can be in your city with a battery system, and you can set up a community microgrid. So when the power grid fails, you can actually be producing electricity with your community microgrid inside your city. And you can have it either municipal owned or consumer owned, or you can have it as being owned by worker cooperatives. And we need these different kinds of Green New Deals. We need a strengthened global organization that can negotiate, plan, organize, schedule, coordinate, fund, implement. We really need to empower the United Nations, UNFCCC, to be much stronger, And then I've set up a website, and also we have a presence on the Facebook page, which Christina was very helpful in setting up for us for the Brighter Climate Futures. And we will in future be doing an open climate university, which will be on YouTube to educate the public, not only about the contents of the book, but also educate high schools, universities, and people. And then also we'll be establishing chapters We are getting started with establishing a chapter in Bangladesh, and then we'll have chapters in the cities and other nations of the world. And anyway, that's my book. You can either order this from the Regent Press or from Amazon or from Barnes & Noble. It's also available in ebook form, and you can order it and read it on your tablet or computer. So what can you do? You can be very active locally, and you can apply pressure, and then link the local to the global. Whatever you can do at the local level is great, but you have to make it clear that unless we succeed, the wildfires are telling us, unless we solve global warming, climate change globally, we're still going to continue to suffer locally. So we have to continue doing that. And with that, I proceed to thank you, and that's the end of my talk. I just wanted to say that, so what will the world look like, after all of this is implemented? Firstly, there's no question of doing without. Don't listen to climate deniers that say, oh, we're going to have to cut back. And don't listen to them. We will have plenty of renewable energy, mainly solar. The earth will be much cleaner, less polluted, not very hot, a beautiful, healthy, and productive planet, and a good life for all. We can have it all, but we have to start now, and we have to work on it in an organized and systematic fashion globally. Again, thank you very much. Sorry, I might have exceeded a little bit of the time. Apologies for that. And now we can get into the question and answer period.
Okay, yes,
Christina.
and thank you very much, Hari. Everybody clap for Hari, thank you. And I do have two things to say. I'm Christina Deptula, working with Hari, and yeah, that was an awesome presentation. And please put questions into the chat, and I have typed the link to be able to order the book from Regent Press, which is a great small press, supports small presses during the time of COVID, all small businesses. I have put the link to order Hari's book in the chat. And also, and I am very sorry that they were not available tonight. They were listening. This is because of me, because I let them know too late. But I am working with two wonderful, talented sign language interpreters. Rebecca King and a colleague of hers, different colleagues joined her on different nights. So, and they are interested in volunteering in the future, the next time, Hari, that you give this talk, so that it will be more accessible. So more people will be able to hear it in American Sign Language.
Great.
So letting you know
Okay.
that that's an option for you and Regent Press. Rebecca King would like to work with you in the future to be able to put that on. And yeah, sorry they weren't able to join us tonight, but that I would really like to